Hey, here's something to think about. Every record you own and every song that you've ever played or loved or downloaded or shared with people has got a story behind it. Even the stuff that you may not know from artists that you may or may not be all that familiar with have got something to tell. And it's my job to help sift through every single one of those stories. Welcome to Baxy's Musical Podcast. If you like what you hear today, share it, rate it, review it, pass it around to all your friends, and be sure to follow the show on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook for regular updates on upcoming episodes. Today, we're brought to you by Metro Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram of Chicopee. Visit Metro's state-of-the-art dealership right next to BJ's and Big Y on Memorial Drive. Or visit MetroJeep.com and drive home in your new Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram today. And now, here's today's interview with Mark Burgess from the Chameleons on Baxy's Musical Podcast.
It's Baxy's Musical Podcast.
One of the great things about doing this podcast is getting the chance to introduce people to music that they might not already know. I'm not necessarily talking about the up-and-coming artists who are just starting out, although I like talking to them too. I'm talking about those who have been neglected and overlooked over the course of many years. I'm talking about the people whose music is so profoundly rich and beautiful that it defies logic and rational thought as to why they have remained hidden and undiscovered for so long. In today's episode, I'm going to try to accomplish one of two things. I'm either going to expose you to one of the greatest bands you've never heard, or I'm going to validate things that you already know because somebody already beat me to it. The band I'm talking about is the Chameleons. And while there's a very good chance that the Chameleons may have slipped under your radar since they released their first album, Script to the Bridge, 41 years ago, there's an even better chance that you'll be thanking me later when you finally get the chance to hear what I'm talking about. Because there is no middle ground when it comes to the Chameleons. The Chameleons are either going to be unfamiliar to you or they are going to completely obliterate your perception of who was arguably one of the greatest bands of the 1980s. Don't believe me? Why don't you stop what you're doing, fire up YouTube, and listen to their song Swamp Thing from their astonishing 1986 album Strange Times. Then listen to the rest of it. Then listen to their first two albums like 1983's debut Script to the Bridge, which I've already mentioned, or their 1985 follow-up, What Does Anything Mean Basically. Then try to listen to their 2001 comeback album, Why Call It Anything, and then tell me I'm full of crap. The Chameleons were a band out of Manchester, England, the city that brought you the Smiths, the Buzzcocks, Joy Division, the New Order, the Fall, Oasis, the Sound, and the Stone Roses. All great bands. But as I'm sitting here today, I cannot tell you why that the Chameleons haven't been in that same conversation with the rest of them as equals, at the very least. Other than to say, this was the career that the Chameleons were hoping for. To be independent, to be in control of the integrity of their own music and their own destiny, even at the expense of greater recognition. But it should be important to note that the Chameleons' legacy shouldn't just be about what they failed to do or that they didn't get their due. The real story should be about a band that refused to compromise as they made some of the greatest albums in post-punk history. That's a damn strong statement, but if you know, you know. The Chameleons are about to release their first set of new music in 23 years, and having heard it, I can tell you firsthand, it is amazing, just like everything else that they have ever done. The Chameleons will also be on tour throughout the summer, a tour which includes stops at the Space Ballroom in Hamden, Connecticut on August 9th and at the Sinclair Theater in Cambridge, Massachusetts on August 10th, where they'll be performing Strange Times in its entirety, and it will be freaking fantastic. And so it was a real, true pleasure to speak to singer, songwriter, bass player Mark Burgess from the Chameleons on Baxy's Musical Podcast. Great to see you.
Thank you.
I appreciate you doing this. This is one of those interviews I have wanted to do for the last 4 years. So to get you is really exciting for me. So thank you so much for taking the time.
You're welcome.
So I was given the advanced preview of the new EP, Where Are You? And as someone who's been a fan of the Chameleons for the last 40 some odd years, I just love it. I mean, this is, it's the first set of real new music in 20 years. And I'm sure people have been hounding you forever about this, but I got to ask the question, what the hell is taking you so long?
Oh, that's a good question. This is the first time, really, I think I felt all the components are actually there. Because Chameleons was never a band where you had like my mate's band, The Wedding Present. He's the songwriter. He provides all the song. He writes all the songs, and he brings the band in. We've never been that way. We've always been like, it's always been a communal effort. Everyone's been always had an input, and it's the first time really that all those components have kind of been there. I mean, obviously, Reg coming back in was a huge factor. Reg coming back to the band because he and I wrote a lot of those songs together initially, at least got them started, got the ball rolling on them. And so having Reg back was obviously a major factor. It would have happened sooner had we not had the corona, the COVID pandemic. That really put a block on things because we were ready to start. But even that was kind of fortuitous in a way, because I think when we're in a much better place now than we were then to really create something that we're this excited about. So, I mean, with Stephen coming on to guitar, Danny coming in full time on keyboards and piano and stuff, and then Todd in the drum stool. It's the first time since the original, Chameleons Prime broke up, that I felt that I'm in a band properly, fully. Yeah. That I'm with people that I can actually write with, and everybody has been bringing their A game to what we're doing. So it's really just been the short answer, I suppose, is the planets aligned.
Well, I mean, it definitely shows that something is connecting again. I mean, the three songs, Where Are You, the first single, Endlessly Falling, and Forever, and there's a full album coming out later in the year, Arctic Moon, and I'm already hearing things in advance that say it's really, really good. And I'm not surprised if the first three songs, if they're indicative of what's to come, it's going to be a monster.
Well, only the A side is actually from the album because we didn't want to pull anything else off it. I mean, we've got a few that are closely to finished. We've got to finish the album in July. We're on about halfway through it, I think. And we're actually writing more material than we need, so we want to keep our options open on that score. But we actually test drove another of the big songs from the album recently. We did a semi, or let's call it a semi-acoustic set, a couple of nights at a place just around the corner from where the studio is. And we decided to preview one of the big songs from the album that night as well, although Todd couldn't be with us because Todd had already returned to the United States. So we actually had Todd playing drums on the computer, and he is playing it, but it's obviously from the actual album take. And then we all played to that. And then we had him up at the end, we put him on a video screen so he could say hello to everybody. And it was a really fun night. But it's kind of different again, it is very different, I think, from what people would normally expect from us. So, sorry, my dog's trying to intrude. It's very different from what people would expect for us. So we were kind of nervous about how it would go down. And even though the room was very small, because it was semi-acoustic set 2 nights, so we played to about, I don't know, maybe I think it was about 60, 70 people a night or something in this small room. But they were hardcore because all these people, they were all like yourself, that go back decades with the band. And the reaction to it was phenomenal, which is all that we hoped. So that gave us a lot of confidence that, because you struggle with that a little bit, you struggle with the legacy element of it because the expectation is obviously high with a lot of the Chameleons fans. And, we didn't want to, I particularly was very vocal about us not utilizing the guitar sound of somebody that hadn't been in the band for over 20 years. I didn't want to take somebody else's guitar sound, even though that guitar sound had become pretty synonymous with the sound of the band. And we were able to get around that, I think, so it doesn't actually, you can tell it's the Chameleons. It's obviously the Chameleons, but it has a different kind of dynamic about it. And we're all very excited by it.
Well, after 40 years, I would think there probably would be at least a little bit of an updated sound that's just like the natural progression of things.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I've been doing Chameleons Vox,
Yeah.
and that basically just recreating it. We didn't really do anything new with that at all because I didn't think I was, as I've explained, I didn't think I was with the people. I didn't, that I could do that with, that I could do that with. So I mean, for a long time, and that had been enough. People had just been wanting to come to hear legacy stuff, but that was kind of, I was reaching the point where I was thinking, no, I want to do something kind
Yeah.
of new now. I want to break away from this. So when Reg came back, it was perfectly timely. But yeah, you're right. I mean, ordinarily a band should constantly be pushing
Yeah.
themselves, and I always felt that I was a bit of a coward in that respect. It was Reg who really cleared it up for me because I was telling him, I was worried before going in. I thought this was going to be a long, protracted process because we hadn't written together for such a long time, and I hadn't really done anything new for quite a long time, and I thought it was going to be a kind of a pulling teeth. And part of that worry was that, like, what I was writing on my own didn't seem to be indicative of a Chameleon's vibe. It was, I mean, I couldn't figure out where this was going to fit in. So I was getting quite anxious about it, and I'm saying, well, and he's going, look, you and I, we are the Chameleons, right? We are Chameleons anyway. Sadly we've lost John, and Dave's disappeared, and he's off the radar or whatever. We are Chameleons, so whatever we do is going to be Chameleons music. And when you think about it like that, you think, fucking hell, yeah, what am I so anxious about?
Yeah.
And that was the nice thing about now, is that I can bring a song that doesn't even feel like, I'm not, and they'll all go, like, I'll listen to it, and by the time they've come in on it, they've elevated it into something else, and it works. And so now I feel like I can write songs and bring them to the band and go, well, I've written this song, what do you think? Whereas before, that would never have been acceptable to do that.
Well, and obviously you're not divorcing, the past either. In fact, you've just released a remastered 3-disc edition of Strange Times, including all the bonus tracks and colored vinyl. And it's funny, and I don't even know why I this is true. I have 2 copies of Strange Times. I don't know why I have 2. It wasn't enough to buy one. I've got 2, and I've also got it on CD too, just in case one of these scratches. And it's
I know
just,
people that want the one with the pink border, and they also want the one with the blue border. And I mean, I'm a vinyl junkie. I even if my turntable is in mothballs, which often it is because I'm moving around so much, I'll still prefer to get a vinyl record for the day when I get it out of mothballs or whatever. I just love the whole format. I fell in love with that format. That format was why I wanted to be in a band. I wanted to make records. So, when we discuss these things, these are, like, if you take the Strange Times package, it was a labor of love for the person that put that together. His name's Chris Connolly. He's been a Chameleons fan. I did one of our very early interviews was for his fanzine. He was like 15 years old when we did that, and he's been a fan ever since. He's the one who's put that together as somebody who loves the band and loves everything, loves the ethos that's around the Chameleons, and it's very much a labor of love. And my point of view is that is something, like, I've got a box set of Station to Station that Chris actually brought back for me from Japan. From the Far East. Well, yeah, from Japan. He brought it back from Japan. He found it in Japan. And he knows that that's my favorite Bowie album. And he's like, I'm going to get that. And he brought it back for me. And it's absolutely amazing in the box. It's got a live performance of Station to Station in there. It's got Station to Station itself. It's got all the fan club pins and postcards. And I'm just like, oh, this is just so beautiful. So, I mean, that's the sort of thing I would like to see from one of my favorite bands. And I think if you're going to pay a lot of money for vinyl now, which you do, I think you feel like you've got something really special and value for money. So, I mean, that we take that kind of very seriously. We're not even doing on the new record, on the single rather, we're not even doing CDs on the single. It's going to be straight download with artwork or a vinyl 12-inch. That's all we're doing. Because I mean, I believe in records, really.
Yeah. And I totally, And I'm with you too on that one too. Although I do buy a lot of CDs, but like any collector, you buy a bunch and they don't even get played. You're just happy you have them, that they're you've completed
Yeah,
the catalog. But that's not the case with the Chameleons. That these records have gotten a lot of use. I remember seeing you guys play live. This goes back, I think, like it was 1987 in Chicago. You played at the Metro Theater. I think
okay. I
Mighty
remember
Lemon
that show.
Drops were with you guys that night, which another Manchester band that I really really liked a lot.
Yeah.
And I
Well, actually, they're from the. Don't let me hear you say that. They're from the Midlands.
well, okay, well,
They're from
my
Wolverhampton.
my,
Wolverhampton.
my mistake, but nevertheless, I remember this so vividly. You guys opened with Swamp Thing, and it was and I recall that feeling, like, and sometimes when you see live music, you may get this moment where you're just thoroughly consumed with this swell of a song, and being in the moment with 700-800 people, or how many people there were that night. And I think that's what that song was designed to do. But I still find myself getting this incredible adrenaline rush whenever I hear that song, and I'm not even the one playing on it. You must feel the power of that particular song and how it completely ignites a room when it starts.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's one of the biggest songs that we do. It's strange because when we did it, we'd written, I think, most of the ideas strange times, and we had a meeting with the producer and with Tom Zutat at Geffen, who was overseeing the project at the time. And they were saying, yeah, we still feel that we need the big song. We still haven't really got the big song. Like Script of the Bridge had second skin on it, and what does anything mean? Basically, we had whatever. I think Perfume Garden. I think he said something, and we went okay. We just went okay, and like, well, Reg had been playing, had been jamming that intro with John, but it hadn't really gone anywhere. I had a chorus thing I kind of stuck in my head, and then I thought, well, there's no reason why they can't go together. And then 3 days later, we had Swamp Thing. We said, well, leave it with us, and we'll. Oh, and it happened really fast. It happened over the course of one rehearsal. I brought that in. I said that thing that you two have been working on, we'll start with that. And Dave was going through his Selena, where he'd rather play Selena because he had a nickel allergy, and the strings were causing him to break. His guitar strings are causing him to break out in eczema. So he's like, he wanted to play on the Selena as much as possible. So he's on that, and it just came together really, really fast. We just got it to. We looked at each other and went, "Yeah, that's going to work," And when we played it to them, Dave Allen was like, he just didn't expect it. Really, he didn't.
Yeah.
I could see he didn't expect it. And we got to the studio, and I even quit smoking because I'm a smoker. And I remember doing some early takes, and like, I'm not happy with the tonality of my voice for this. This needs a little bit of a more mature tonality. And he said, well, just stop smoking for a few days. He said, you don't have to quit for good. Just if you can stay off them for 3 days and do it again, I think that'll help. And it did. It gave my voice a more mature sounding tonality. I mean, I listen to it now and still wish I could redo it, but it did the job at the time, and we finished it, and it's marked. I can remember being with the lad from Depeche Mode who died recently.
Oh, Andrew. Yeah.
Yeah, we were sitting together watching the space shuttle launch because they used to do them live then, and it exploded right in front of us. And
Hmm.
I ran into the studio, and they were doing they were stood in a tray of gravel, stomping up and down in a tray of gravel for the intro, and I'm like, the fucking space shuttle just exploded. That was the first. I was one of the first people in the world to hear "Walking on Sunshine" by Katrina and the Waves, because she was next door, and we were working on something. And she comes rushing out, and she goes, "I was playing pool." And she goes, "Can I ask you to come and listen to this for a minute?" And I went, "Yeah, no problem." I walked into their control room, and they just finished Walking on Sunshine, and they played it. And we were like, "What do you think?" I said, "This is fucking huge." So you've got a fucking hit record. Oh, no, thank you. Oh, great. No. I was one of the first people to hear it. They just mixed it. So I have like all these other little memories around it as well. But yeah, I mean, I knew at the time it was going to be a big song. I mean, it was like when we played it, it was fucking massive.
When you play that song live, Actually, there's a bunch of songs you could say, and probably have the same effect, but in particular that song, and the fans are
Mhm.
reacting to it in such a visceral way, and they do.
Yeah.
What's in your head when you're playing it and you're seeing the reaction of it? I mean, it's a song
Uh,
that you wrote when you were in your 20s,
oh,
and here you are about to turn a little bit older, and it still lands on people like a hammer. I mean, it's
my,
got to
my
be an
thought,
amazing feeling.
my thought is, I hope I don't fuck it up. I hope I don't. I hope we play it. I hope I play it right. Because like I get so into it sometimes, playing bass and stuff. I just don't. I just don't. I just want it to be as good as we can play it. And I think now that we've got Danny in as well,
Mm,
we can do the Salinas and the guitar. Because I had to play. Neil was very good at playing it when we didn't have any keyboards on it and making it work. Because of the his command of his craft. But it's nice to have that extra guitar on it and the Salinas on it. Now it's more powerful than ever. We played it. I think we with this current lineup in December when we went to Porto. We did a festival in Porto. That's one of the best versions that we've played up till
mm.
now. And yeah, man, it took the roof off, and it always does. I think it's such a, but you've got to get it absolutely. Tempo's got to be absolutely right. That's the other thing as well. You play it too fast or you play it too slow, it kind of like you don't quite get it. It's got to be the tempo's got to be bang on. But I mean, Todd's really meticulous about that, about his tempos. He works really hard getting everything perfectly right. He's a very ADHD, so he's like, yeah,
Well,
which is great.
I saw a performance of it on YouTube from just a few months ago in Montreal, and it sounded just great to me. And you could tell, I mean, you could tell the crowd really just exploded when all of a sudden that opening riff comes around. He's like, "Holy shit, this is gonna be what I paid for. This is exactly why I came to the show."
Yeah, I mean, it was that with the mission.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean it was really great. We had a great time on that tour. We loved it. We really enjoyed it. The only downside for us is that we couldn't bring Danny with us because we
Mm,
couldn't get his work visa sorted out. So we were a man down because that's how it feels now. It's like, I mean, Danny has been working with me on and off for quite a while, but he's never done America with me
mm.
because I could never get it together. And even in Europe and England, there's a lot of times when he couldn't get there because he had another job to do. Now he's in the band full time. So, but that's like that really reinforces what I'm saying about how happy I am with every single person and what they're bringing to it and how we feel like a proper band. Because we were phoning him, taking no absolutely no notice of the time differences whatsoever. So we were like he was being woken at 2 a.m. by these crazy nutters in a tour bus, all just like phoning him up and saying, "God, we fucking miss you, mate. We wish you were here and all that." And he really appreciated that as well. And what he's bringing to it is really great. So this time when we go and do the Strange Science performances, we'll have Danny with us, and that's great because with Danny with us, it means I have more strings in terms of like what songs I can pull because there are some songs that I really don't want to play without him,
Yeah.
like Tears, for example.
Mm.
I really want him in on that, and yeah, there's a few others. There's a few other things that I really miss his input. So yeah, with the one you, so I think it's going to be even better now this time because you're going to see the full band.
I know that there's not an interview that goes by where you don't get asked about the Chameleons being overlooked and underappreciated, and every time I've heard you answer those questions, I find myself really respecting the answer. That with you guys, it was never about becoming major rock stars. It was always about the music, and even more so about maintaining the integrity of the music. And that may seem like total BS to somebody else, but who doesn't know the band. But it really is how you have viewed your entire career. It's always been about the music, and I just I'm fascinated by that. Tell me about your desire to keep all of that managed the way you have.
Well, you have to have a certain amount of arrogance, which a young band, it's a necessary thing. It's not a condemnation. Bands when you're in your early 20s or your mid 20s, you should be arrogant. Really, you should think you're the fucking dog's bollocks. You need that because, like, in a lot of cases, to get to the point where people are even taking attention, you've had to go through a lot of apathy
Mm,
about what you're doing and you have to counter that apathy, and every great band has gone through that. at one time or another, where they'd be regarded as a load of shit, only to turn out to be like one of the best things that ever happened, like the Beatles, for example. So, I mean, you have to have that kind of arrogance and that kind of self-belief. But in our case, it was really very simple because we were getting a lot of interference with how the music should be. And if there was one thing that we refused to let anyone mess with, was our music, because we'd arrange things. So I mean, as I say, like Second Skin, for example, is something like 7-minute arrangement, right?
Right.
And we were being told to cut that down to like 4 minutes. I mean, and if you're familiar with our music, if you can imagine a 4 minutes Second Skin, if you can arrange Second Skin in 4 minutes, man, I will actually fucking, I'll take you to dinner. I mean, it's like it's impossible. And because that was the way it was. That was the thinking at the time, was that your tracks had to be short and concise, and we were writing like these epic tunes like Second Skin and View from a Hill. I remember when they were telling us that the ending of View from a Hill was unnecessary. And I'm saying, but it's the end of the album.
Yeah.
That is the end of the, even at that point, we hadn't even got anywhere near to recording Script to the Bridge at that time. And already I heard View from a Hill and going, that is the closer. That is the end of the album. So, I mean, and what a good example of that is when MCA put out their version of Script to the Bridge, where they rearranged the track order. They changed the title of one of the songs to be more radio friendly title. They cut the end of the fucking album off it altogether. I mean, they raped it.
Yeah.
They raped it, and that is why we were so. If anybody really wants to know why we were so intense about remaining the integrity of our music, get a copy of that fucking MCA record that they call Script to the Bridge, which isn't, that's wrapped in yellow fucking plastic or whatever it is, and listen to that and compare that to our version, and that is the reason. It's right there.
Well, I think it's also true that, had you gone into all of that and complied to their wishes, and you're, all of a sudden they've got you filling up, football stadiums and hanging, platinum records on the wall. While that's great in some respects, it does kind of compromise the art and the intention of what you were trying to do musically, if that was your intention, and it clearly wasn't. And I think that's to the benefit for the fans and for the music.
I mean, it's important for me though that to be honest about it. We had no problem with getting to be as big as U2, as long as we were doing it on our terms.
Sure.
If we were making our music our way, we were packaging it the way that we wanted to package it, because all the band had input on it. So when you bought a Chameleons record, you had Chameleons input right down to the middles on the record, to what was inscribed on the outer edge of when we cut it, to what the cover looks like, to what the cover says, to the words on it, the text on it. It was all the band that was doing that. We didn't hand it off for somebody else to do that for us. We did that, and then we present all of that to a graphic designer. But I mean, even that, a lot of the work with that was was done pretty much because Dave Fielding, prior to becoming full-time guitar player with the Chameleons, was in training as a graphic designer. He had a natural talent as a graphic designer. That's what he was doing. He was at an advertising agency for a short while called Yellowhammer in London, in Manchester, that had London offices, and that's what he was doing. So he absolutely knew how to put it together. We had this expertise in our band. So why not do it all ourselves and that please ourselves? And then the person that's buying the record, it's Chameleons from top to bottom.
Yeah.
It's not just the music that's coming off the plastic.
I know for me, as a fan, the Chameleons were one of those bands that you wanted everyone else to know about, but at the same time, you wanted to keep it all for yourself because it was your secret. This, I have to believe you've heard that time and time again over the last 40 years.
I've been fans of bands like that myself. I
Yeah.
felt the same. I felt that way about John Fox's Ultravox.
Yeah. I feel that way too.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I know what that feels like and I understand it. Yeah.
One of the things that we never had here in the United States, and it's kind of unfortunate, we never had a John Peel in the U.S. And I know that he plays a pretty pivotal component in the Chameleon story. You did the John Peel sessions, and you released that album a while back, and those sessions are absolutely fantastic. Tell me about him and how important he was to you guys at that time?
Oh man, he was iconic. I mean, for me personally, because I'd been listening to him from a very young age. I was picking him up on my transistor radio in the late '60s and stuff when he was DJing at pirate radio and whatnot. When the BBC reinvented itself, a lot of those DJs that were pirate radio DJs on Caroline and stuff, they all ended up working at the BBC on the newly vamped Radio 1. The thing about John was he was broadcasting on the only national radio station in the country, right? The BBC were the only ones at that time that their coverage was the entire country. So if you got on John Peel, or on any or even Kid Jensen or any of those late night DJs, your music was being broadcast from Land's End to John O'Groats. So I mean, so I knew John from that background because that's how I knew about Tyrannosaurus Rex and early Bowie and all that kind of thing. Because they all came through him. He was a legend even before punk happened. And then when he would feature bands, especially after the punk explosion, when so many bands were suddenly erupting all over the place, and you would listen to like 2 brand new bands a night that he discovered, right? That managed to get sessions. So we became huge fans of his because it was the best way of finding new music, And you might not it wasn't like you liked everything that he did. You didn't, right? I mean, there was a lot of things John was into that I didn't get, right? That didn't move me, but there was a great amount that he did. So I mean, when we approached Peel, getting on his show was what we were trying to do. We weren't seeing it as a stepping stone to getting more exposure or anything. We didn't see it as a career thing or a strategic career move. We just wanted to be on his show because we were fans of his show. So much fantastic music came through John.
Yeah.
Everybody else was listening, and that's when I realized that even the majors were all listening to John, because we when our Peel session was broadcast on Peel, our lives changed. I know it's a cliche to say your life changes overnight, but it really, really did.
Yeah.
My life changed overnight. The next morning, that phone started ringing, and my life completely changed forever. That was the power of it, And a John Peel endorsement was just like better than anything. You had a John Peel endorsement. I mean, we had a John Peel endorsement. Jesus, man, he was hyping our session the night before the broadcast. He's saying, "Make sure you don't make sure you don't miss tomorrow night's program because I've got a real treat for you tomorrow." And at first we're going like, "Oh, I wonder who that is." We didn't even realize he was talking about us because we didn't have a name for the band. Oh, and that was funny. We hadn't even thought of a name, and he said, "Like, you better think of one pretty damn quick." We went, "Oh, okay." That was our next task, was to try and figure out what the band was called. We didn't even have that when he wrote to us. We hadn't got that far to actually think about what we're going to call the band. So, I mean, to have that endorsement, was obviously a major, major plus. And the next day, the phone was ringing, and everything was on a roller coaster after that moment. But my life to this day, right now talking to you, it's all that emotion.
So where does Tony Fletcher come into the picture for you guys? I mean, I know he was, in a way, he was kind of the manager of the band, but he had been working for a record company,
Sure, yeah.
and then eventually, started to work full time. How did he get involved in the Chameleon story?
Well, our involvements with records labels it was horrendous, and we got ourselves in all sorts of fucking problems. And we at this particular time, we really weren't able to do anything except play gigs. I think gigs was the only thing we could do. Couldn't write for legal reasons. We couldn't publish anything. We couldn't do anything. I think the only thing we did during that time was the third Peel session. I think Peel heard what was going on, and he said, "Right, we'll get him in for another session on here." And we did a Peel session, but we weren't able to do anything. And then this management company came along called Kennedy Street Enterprises they'd been around Manchester, involved in promotion and management and whatnot since the 60s. I mean, the first thing I saw when I walked into Kennedy Street Enterprises was a photograph of Danny Batesh, who was the CEO, sitting there posing with the Beatles, which impressed me no end. And they took us under their wing, and they said, like, "We want to work with you," and they got all the legalities ironed out so that we could get back to making records and get our careers back on track. And Tony Fletcher worked for them. Tony was a troubleshooter who they'd say, go and look after so and so. They've got a show tonight at the Apollo. Go down and make sure they've got everything they need and all that kind of thing. And that's exactly what he did for us. We were playing a show at the Ritz in Manchester, and he just turned up. And we knew he said, "Oh, I'm Tony from Kennedy Street," and we went like, "Oh, how you doing?" And at the time, we were talking about a backdrop, and
Okay.
our chief roadie was talking to another guy, and he's going, "What we need, what we could do with really, is a fucking big black drape." And Tony's and he goes, "You need a black drape?" And we and his name was Spoonhead. He goes, "Yeah, I need it. I need it for." He says, "Right, hold on." He gets his mobile phone out, which impressed us. He had a mobile phone, right? This is the late 80s. You can imagine him, man. It's about this big, right? It was like a house brick, right? He takes his phone and he gets on his phone and he phones the Apollo across town, which is a big theater across town, which we all knew about. So. And he goes, "Right, I need a black drape. It's got to be this big, blah blah." He gives the dimensions, right, just on visual, and said and I need it within 30 minutes. Right, okay, good. It's going to be here in half an hour. And we just went we weren't used to this kind of efficiency, right?
Sure.
We're like, okay, what did you say your name was? And we spent that all the rest of that night, because he didn't really know who we were, to be fair.
Right.
Right. He knew that they'd signed it, but he didn't know anything about the band. He didn't know anything really about the band. And he sees this gig at the Ritz, which is like sold out, go crazy, stage invasion, the whole the whole 9 yards. And he's like, "What the fuck is this?" And we're talking, he's getting to know us, we're getting to know him. And he's like, "Well, where are you going tomorrow?" And we're saying, "Well, we've got to fly to Paris. We're doing this thing in Paris. We're doing this television thing in Paris, and then we're doing this show." And he's like, "Okay." He says, "Look, I'm coming with you. I'm coming with you." So he gets on the phone again and he books himself a plane ticket. And now he's coming with us to Paris. He organizes the car to take us to the television studio, to the venue, and he does all of that. He's running, and then he's talking to the promoter. He's going, "There's no lighting engineer." And the French guy's going, "No, we don't have lighting. I can't afford lighting. We have no one to." He goes, "Right, where's your lighting desk?" And he goes, "I do love it." He's right. And he runs upstairs and he does the lights for the show. This is Tony Fletcher. So from that moment on, we fell in love with him, and we became really, really close. And he managed us unofficially, because the Kennedy Street wanted a management deal. And Tony, kept saying, "Don't sign it. Don't sign it. Let him be your publishers if you want to do that. But stall on the management contract. Don't sign it." So don't.
Yeah.
And we're like, "Well," and I'll keep, I'll be the buffer. And we kept wanting him to. We said, "Well, why don't you manage us, Tony?" And he's like, "I said, it's complicated. It's a conflict of interest, because they employed him, right? They employed him. So if they wanted to manage us, and we kept saying, 'Well, we're not sure,' and then he becomes our manager. Yeah, it's impossible." But then something happened, and I'm not going to get into it, but something happened. And he came in one day, and we were having a fucking argument as usual, me and Dave. And then as soon as he comes in, it all stops and goes away. All the tension goes our way. Nobody cares anymore about what we're arguing about. Hey, and he walks in like a fucking ray of sunshine, and he says, "I'm going to manage you." And we just went like, "What?" Because he turned so many people down.
Sure.
I don't know if you know 10cc and all that lot, but
Sure.
he turned them all down. And he says, "Yeah," he said, "I'm going to manage you." He said, "You have to go to America. You have to be prepared to stay there 2 years. We're going to make the next record over there. But if you're prepared to do that, then I'll manage it. And I'll make Harvey Lisberg, who's the Kennedy Street guy, I'll make him happy, give him a couple of points to keep him sweet, because all he wants to do is be involved with something that's successful. That's all he wants. So he'll be all right." And we're going like, "Fantastic, man." We couldn't believe it. We couldn't believe it. We were really happy. And we all made the commitments that he wanted us to commit. And then 2 weeks later, he was dead.
Mm.
So that was really traumatic. And the reason the band didn't survive that after that, it was just, that was the last. We'd had all these problems that we met head on and got through, survived, kept going, kept making the music. That was just too much. It knocked us off for 6. I think one of the few times Dave Phelan and I actually embraced in tears. We were like hugging each other,
Wow.
giving each other comfort. That's one of the only times that ever happened.
You know,
You know,
of all the management stories you ever hear in music, you rarely hear one that is positive. And
Mm,
you know, in this situation, it was, and it's a shame that that he died
yeah,
so suddenly from a heart attack.
yeah,
But
42 years old he was.
yeah, but nevertheless, I mean, what a terrible loss for you guys. Just as things were starting to
Yeah,
really kind of
yeah,
to show real promise for you guys after that
yeah.
third record.
I mean, there's no doubt in my mind, the sequel album to Strange Times that had been recorded when we were writing it at the time would have been a fucking masterpiece. I have no doubt about that
Yeah,
whatsoever. And B, focusing on the United States where we were getting much more respect. We were getting a lot. The media in the United States were treating us with a lot of respect. They actually understood our music. They understood the ethic of the band, whereas the British press didn't, and we were getting like ignored um, deliberately and insulted.
yeah,
And when we did the tour with the Mighty Lemon Drops that you mentioned, those venues were selling out, right? And it was because Chameleons were on the bill. And when we went back to the United Kingdom, we were reading about what this wonderful tour that Mighty Lemon Drops had just done of the United States, and of the Chameleons. There was absolutely no mention whatsoever.
unbelievable.
You know,
So you guys broke up after that, like you said, and it would
John left the band first. Yeah,
right.
we went in and did the Tony Fletcher tracks, the first four, which were of this new record that we were writing, the first four demos. Because he phoned me up and he just said, "I'm going in there and I'm setting my kit up," because he says, "I don't know what else to do." So I'm sitting here in pieces and I don't know what else to do. So I said, "So you can do what you want, but I'm going in there and setting up my drums." And I said, "Well, if you're going in there, I'm going in there, right?"
Right.
And then we said to Dave and Reg, "You're like, me and John are going in. We're going to carry on. We're going to record." So they said, "All right, let's do that." And that's where those four tracks came from. But the strain was too much. So by the end, at the end of that particular little session when we recorded these four demos, John, I was in a cafe, a local cafe there, and John came in. And he said, "Like, I can't do it anymore. I've had enough," because it was a very stressful time in there. We were, it was not ideal. It was very difficult circumstances. But I think amongst that, we did some. I personally think I did the best work I've ever done for the community. Like, Is It Any Wonder and The Healer, particularly, transcendental for me. I think it would have been an amazing album.
Yeah.
But and I followed him. I just said, "I'm not staying if you're not." So
It after those sessions, it would be another 14 years before you guys would reform and do another album.
yeah,
Why call it anything? Which I thought was a great record to come back.
I like it. I
I,
liked it.
yeah, I
Yeah,
did. I really liked it too. And I just wonder what so after all that time, what brought you guys back together? I mean, 14 years apart is a
Dave engineered it. Dave
good long time.
engineered Dave Fielding engineered the whole thing. He contact. I was being managed by a guy called Rob Brown at the time, and he got hold of my manager and said, like, would Mark be willing to have a sit down, a meeting? And but he wouldn't really say. He was a bit vague about what it was about. But Rob came to me. He said, "I think we should do this, man." I said, "I think you should meet him." Because there's been a lot of animosity and a lot of grief and a lot of stress and all that. But I'm thinking, you know what, that is if he's going to offer an olive branch like that, it takes. I know, knowing Dave like I knew him, must have took a lot to do that. So I'm like, all right, fuck it, I'll go. And we had this meeting and we came away, and I'm saying, we had this meeting, and we walking away, I said to Rob, "Is he saying what I think he's saying? Because, am I imagining things, or did he just talk about getting the band back together?" And like he said, he's talking about reforming the community. I'm like, fuck me, never saw that coming. But then so then we had another meeting, and he's saying, "But you'll have to talk to Reg." I said, "Well, have you not talked to him?" He said, "No, I haven't spoken to him about it." And I said, "Well, why you two are like two peas in the pod? Why do I have to Well, he needs to be, I think he'd be better from you." All right, so I go around to see Reg. I haven't seen him in 10 years. I knocked on his door. He opens the door. It's been like I hadn't seen him for like a week or something. He comes in, "Do you want a cup of tea?" Yeah. Sit down, and we're just like. So then we start talking, and Reggie's only concern was like, "I don't want to be in the middle of you two at war with each other." And I'm like, "Well, we're not going to do that, And we'll if unless everybody wants to do something, we won't do it. If one person doesn't want to do something, we don't do it, right? No voting.
Yeah.
We'll just say like, well, Reggie's not into doing it. We're not doing it." Um, And they said, like, yeah, okay, that's it. I mean, that went by the wayside after a while. But I mean, at least it got, it got the ball up. But it was very much Dave who did that, It wasn't me.
When the end result of it was a really good record. I mean, it really was a very,
I
very good
think it's a
record.
great record. I think, what disappointed me was that, I thought, I mean, I wasn't, I mean, the others were pretty out of touch but when we came back together, they weren't, because I was the only one on the internet at that time, right?
Hmm.
I was familiar with the internet. They weren't, and I knew that the audience had grown and stuff, and I knew that the popularity was there. They weren't so sure about that, so they were a little bit out of touch. But where I was out of touch was, I thought that we'd get an opportunity to get together, figure out how we're going to write with each other again, because it's been 10 years, right? We're all different people now, slightly different people anyway, we're all 10 years older, and we're going to figure that out. We're going to make a record, and then and as I'm making it, I'm thinking, all right, this is a good starting point, but the next one we do will be a killer.
Right.
And we never got the opportunity to, because that album polarized our audience so much that half the audience didn't buy it. So the record label just went, well, we're not going to do another one because it didn't sell that well, right? So we didn't get an opportunity to go in to make another one. And then unfortunately, in the wake of that, it fell apart again.
And having heard the newer songs on the EP, which comes out on May 24th, it's pretty clear to me that the like you say, the band is back on track. It's something to be really, really proud of. And the new album is coming out later this year. As a fan, I have to say I'm very excited about it. I know you guys are going to be on tour coming through our area, Space Ballroom in Hamden, Connecticut on August 9th, and the Sinclair Theater in Cambridge, Mass on August 10th. I hope I have the opportunity to get out there to see you guys again, because I have always felt that the Chameleons are a band that, there's no lukewarm opinion. You either have never heard them or you love them. And that's the only, there's no gray area there, Mark.
No, there's no gray area. But I do think that the new record, one of the things it's going to do, I think it's going to bring people to this band that probably, for the first time. I think it's going to. I mean, there's a lot of people there that didn't really care for a lot of that early stuff, that are going to really like this. So I think it's going to expand our audience. I think it will polarize some of them to a certain degree, that shimmering Dave Fielding guitar sound isn't present, and that might be enough for them to go, it's not really my thing anymore. You've got the old, to those people, I'd say, you've got those records, you've got those records that we made with Dave. Enjoy.
Yeah.
We're still going to play them at shows. We're still going to play that stuff. We're not slamming the door on it completely. But in terms of what our new stuff, this is very much us. This is me and Reg and Danny and Stephen and Todd.
Well, I think if fans go in with an open mind, they'll realize that this is the Chameleons, and it is definitely worth enjoying and embracing. Mark, this has been so great to talk to you. I'm so happy to have the opportunity, and like I said, I should be thanking you for 40 years of joy.
Thank you. I just want, before we wrap it up though, I do want to say though that track, the B-side of the single, is a song that was one of the first songs we ever wrote together. Actually, we've reworked it, and it was one of 6 that we reworked for the Ritz History of the Chameleons that we did last Christmas, the live shows, and then we recorded them. And 5 of those, I gave Philip a choice; he could pick 5 of the 6. They're all legacy tracks. We did The Fan and the Bellows, Things I Wish I'd Said, Every Day I'm Crucified, Nostalgia, and Nathan's Phase. And one other, and Endlessly Falling, which we use as a B-side. They're actually going to come out on a German label this year. So stay tuned to our social media and everything for information about that. He's got an underground label in Berlin. 5 of those tracks, 5 of the 6 are going to come out on his record that he's doing. So we're going to actually have 2 records out. One of them are going to be like 5 reworked songs that we never really finished, or I never really felt satisfied with back in the day. And then we've got Arctic Moon, which is brand new material coming out at some point.
Great.
We're going to finish it in July. So
I'm really looking forward to it. By the way, happy birthday in advance. I know that's right around the corner for you. You're very welcome.
Yeah, I'm going to be stuck on a Virgin airplane for the whole of my birthday. But thank you very much.
That's okay, Mark. Great to talk to you. Have a great afternoon.
Likewise, man. Thank you
now.
so much.
The name of the upcoming album from the Chameleons is Arctic Moon, and it should be available later this year. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, subscribe to it, like it, share it with all your friends. You can also follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook, and you can email me at bax@rock102.com. I'd love to hear what you think. Thanks again to Metro, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Rambo Chicopee for their support, and thank you for listening to Baxy's Musical Podcast.